Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to my hobby blog. Today I'm very excited because I'm going to be talking about book 3 of Book of the New Sun, sort of the Lictor. This is a copy I found just at McKay's and I thought it was cool. But I was reading off of this version, which puts book 3 and 4 together into one volume. So sort of the Lictor is book 3 of the Book of the New Sun. If you don't know anything about it, it is amazing. This series continues to blow my mind with how Gene Wolfe's writing is, how much effort I have to put into this book to understand it and to really, I guess, enjoy it. Because the more effort that you put into this series, the more you will enjoy it. And this book was very unforgiving to me, and I had to reread a lot of chapters because so much of this book continues to build upon a lot of the lore that we get in the earlier books, and it is so hard to read. This book, I think, was more straightforward than book 2, but there's still a lot that happens in this book where, as I'm talking about it now and for today for this review, I feel like I'm going to be missing a lot, and I will not be going as deep as into detail as I usually do, because this book did take me longer. It took me almost a month for me to read. And that's only because of what's been happening in my personal life with me getting laid off my job and then me just moving, just not having time to read. But this weekend or last few days, I was finally able to sit down and read this book. And there's a lot that I've forgotten in the first half of the book, but I think that's okay because a lot of what happens in the first half sort of wraps up in the sections that I'm in, because it was around the time when Severian runs into the boy who he calls Severian. That was around the time when I had stopped reading the book, and I was really enjoying it, and I really wanted to continue. I just didn't have time. So a lot of the first half I don't remember as strongly, but the second half continues the quality that this series was at. I greatly enjoyed the storybook story that we got in this one from the brown book that Thecla gave Severian. And this one was about a lot of different animals, and it felt very like indigenous American to me. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this really reminds me of a lot of mythologies that I've learned about in college and my history of North Carolina class and like all this different stuff. And then at the end of that chapter, it says like, what is your name? And the guy's like, my name's Squanto. And like my brain blew up in that moment because I was right. I knew that this was a story referencing Squanto. Because I grew up in North Carolina, so we learn about Squanto in school. And reading that story just kept reminding me of it, like in my subconscious. And then I was talking with my friend who has read up to book 4, and he was like, I have zero idea what you're talking about. But like it was just really funny, like making that connection. And then at the end of the chapter being like confirmed right and correct about that feeling. And that was just so cool. Because all the other storybooks in book 1 and book 2, I really enjoy them. I love the imagery of them, the language of it, everything. I just don't really know the relevance of it. And this story, I don't care about the relevance. I was so happy that I was right about that. And then after that moment, Severian meets the boy Severian, and we get a really nasty description of the Alzebo eating somebody and melting their face and all this stuff. And the boy runs off and he gets missing, and then Severian has to go find him. He gets captured, imprisoned by I think the guy's name is not Typhon, but it's Dolmeco, I think his name is, or I can't remember the name that well, but he sort of rescues Severian, and he takes the boy hostage, and that's when the Alzebo eats him, and then they run off again, and then like a lot of weird stuff happens, and eventually Severian climb a mountain, that is like an arm like outstretched to the skies, and there's a gold ring on it, and Severian is like, yeah, go touch that gold ring, see what happens. And the boy immediately gets immolated and just crumples into like ash. Like, what the hell? Like, what is that gold ring? Why did it do that? And we meet this character named Typhon, who is apparently the Artok and the ruler of this section of the world. And he talks about how these mountains were created for him and all these different statues, and tells Severian, like, you need to go to the mountain and climb up the left eye, but don't do the right eye because that one's too difficult for you or something. I didn't really understand that, but it was cool. I did not mind it. And then we get a really fascinating scene where Severian kills Typhon, and he like pushes him off the mountain. And then Severian shows up to this castle or he shows up to this lake that has these shore people who are having sort of like a war with the lake people. And this was my favorite part of this book, easily, and probably because it's the one I most read in just the last few days. But that entire section between the lake people and the shore people was so fascinating. I felt really bad for Pia, who is the servant that one of the lake people or shore people have imprisoned, and they have tied her to some chains. And Severian is like, why don't you just put a log under your chain and you can float away to your wandering island, and like all this different stuff. And she ignores him, and then he has her smuggle Terminus Est and all this stuff for him because he's a prisoner at this point to the shore people. And he's trying to get an idea of like, how do I get out of this situation and also help the lake people. And he starts talking to a few of them and befriends them, and then they show up to Baldanda's castle, which I remember Baldanda's talking about his castle in book 1. I believe is when we meet him and Dr. Talos. And I love seeing Baldanda's again, but I have to be honest, and I do not like that Baldanda's, by the end of this book, is trying to kill Severian, and Severian is trying to kill Baldanda's also. I just love the friendship before this moment, and finding out that Severian is not actually friends, I guess, anymore with Baldanda's. I don't know. It was a little sad. I felt bad for him. I did not want to see him killed, but we see him summon all these mist monsters, and many-limbed creatures show up, and ends up that the lake people, and they're rising up against the shore people, and there's just chaos ensuing. And Severian is trying to kill Baldanda's because Baldanda's just took the claw of the Conciliator and just threw it across the world and was like, yeah, good luck finding this. And so that's what Severian is doing at the end of the book, trying to find the claw. And then Baldanda's is telling him, like you're never going to find it and all this stuff. I hope you die. And Baldanda's, like, jumps out of the window and lands into the lake. And a big explosion happens, and then he disappears. And then a great serpent rises from the lake and flies into the sky, and we never see it again. So I don't know what that's about. Very cool. Very interested and intrigued about what's going to happen next. Book 4, I've heard, is just insanity, but I really loved just that last half of the book. The first half was amazing. I love seeing the city of Thrax, because we've been trying to get there for a few books now, and we're finally there. But we're not there long, which is a little sad, but this is Gene Wolfe. Every chapter feels like it could be an entire novel. And with how much rereading I have to do, it really feels as if I'm reading a 1,000-page book. And it may sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not. This is like what I signed up for, and this is what I love about Gene Wolfe's writing, because this is the first time I've read The Sword of the Lictor. As I said in my first book 1 review and my book 2 review, I just kind of blazed through the first 2 books, the first read, and I did not understand anywhere near as much as I should. So I reread them, and then that's when I did my reviews, and book 3 is just, I have no idea. I had no idea going into it. So a lot of this I'm sort of processing and hoping I got everything that I need for book 4, because book 4 is the last one, and I don't want to miss any details that I needed to know. But it is just fascinating. I love all the lore that we're getting about outer space with all the different they're not cacogens, but they're these like ooze people, and there's 3 of them that Severian meets with before fighting with Baldandas, and that I love that shit. That is my favorite part about reading fantasy, is meeting these non-human entities and getting the stories, and they talk about coming in from outer space and being in the far reaches of space and having to fly in to do the Artok's bidding. Like, we haven't gone into space yet. Like, I feel like now that we're in book 4, that we need to be really getting all the lore that we can about how, like, what is going on outside of Earth. So I'm very interested in that. I really want more of that. I think that's all I want from book 4. And if we get that and more, Gene Wolfe just magic, I will be very happy. I don't think this book is as much of a favorite for me as book 2 was, but I think it's the same level as book 1. It's like a 9.5 out of 10. Like, this book is just incredible. It continues to be amazing. I'm a little sad because 10 Minutes S was broken at the end of this book, so I'm not really happy about that. But Severian finds a new claw that is like very dark, but it bleeds light, kind of like a, I guess, anti-Nightblood, if you're a Cosmere fan. But I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that claw is, because apparently when Severian looks at it, and he looks at it too long sometimes, he forgets how to think, and he's like, yeah, I need to stop looking at this so I can go back to normalcy. And I don't know what that means. So I'm very curious to see what that will do in book 4. But Vodalis, we got really nothing about him this book, so I really want more Vodalis. In the next one, trying to think anything else. All I know about book 4 is what I know from the very first chapter of book 1, which is that eventually Severian does become the Artok, because that is very clearly spelled out in the very first chapter. And again, I don't think this is a series that you can be spoiled on, because there's just so many details and layers to the writing of Gene Wolfe that I feel like no matter how much you know going into it, it does nothing in terms of the reading experience, because there's so many layers to the story, and I just love it. I love this series. This is probably my top 3. It's definitely top 5. I don't know. Maybe I'll rate it even higher than Malazan. Like, that's sort of how I'm feeling, because these books are much shorter. I can read these a lot faster, but I get the same level, if not a higher level of enjoyment reading Book the New Sun, because every page was so meticulously planned and outlined, and every word matters in the story. And it's incredible to me that Gene Wolfe did not have an editor, because I just try to imagine this book coming out now, 40 something years later, because this came out in 1980, 1981, all the way up to 1984, I believe, with the sequel coming out a few years after Book the New Sun. But it is just so incredible, like, reading the series. And this would not be publishable today, because, I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it would only be self-published. But this is definitely one of the major pillars of the genre, Gene Wolfe. And I do plan on reading the short story The Cat before going into book 4, because I've heard that the Cat short story builds on to everything in the previous 3 books, and that I need to read it before book 4. So I don't know what that's for, and I don't know why, but that's what I'm going to do. So I will do a short video on The Cat whenever I read it, probably towards the end of the weekend, maybe Monday. But I do plan on starting Citadel of the Artok book 4 of the book New Sun very soon, probably Monday or Tuesday at the latest. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about this book. It is incredible. I encourage everybody to read it. This is a spoiler review, so those who have been watching this have already read the book, but like for anyone watching it, like keep spreading this book to anybody you know. I think everyone should read this series, and I just can't get enough. So thank you all so much for watching, and please have a great rest of the day.